Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, The Virgo Dad. Today I'll be sharing with you something that has happened to Little May earlier this week. So earlier this week, Little May actually speed up some brown stuff along with her milk, and in the brown stuff there seemed to be some traces of blood. And then later in that day, she also had some black streaks in her poop, which was very unusual because all along her poop was one consistent color. So before I go on any further, I would like to clarify that I'm just sharing my experience, and there could be many reasons for the brown color speed up or blood in speed up, and then for black streaks in poop. So there are also a lot of different reasons why that may occur. So if you are concerned or are looking for medical advice, I would strongly recommend you visit your pediatrician to seek professional medical advice for what may be happening to your baby. I will start from the beginning when it all happened. So on that fateful day earlier this week, around 4 p.m, I was at work and my wife was at home tending to our baby Little May. So my wife has just finished direct latching Little May for her feet, and then has done the usual such as burping her and then putting her on the bed. And then Little May was having fun trying to taste her own little hands. And then my wife needed to clear the rubbish, so she went out for a little moment, less than 5 minutes, and came back. And to her surprise, she saw this brown color stuff along with the milk speed up. So you can see the photo here. So you can see from the photo that there's a significant portion of this brown colored speed up. And then if we zoom in there, you could see some kind of seemingly blood stains. So we were quite concerned. So when my wife came back and then saw this, she actually took a photo and shared with me. So one other surprising thing we noticed is that when my wife came back and saw the speed up, Little May was actually looking perfectly fine. She was smiling when she saw my wife came back and then moving around actively. So it didn't seem anything out of the ordinary, except for the fact that the cloth beside her has this speed up. So why we put a white cloth there? So usually for Little May, when we put her down to rest, we'll put a cloth below. So in case there's any speed up from her, it's easier to clean up. And then we thought it was quite lucky that we had a white cloth, because if we have any other colored cloth, it might not be so obvious to see the blood stain or brown color stuff. So we did a bit of research, and then from the things I read online, it was most probably a case where there was some blood in the milk. So it probably came from cracked nipple. But then the thing is, I spoke to my wife, she didn't felt like her nipple has cracked, although it's a bit painful. But then it seemed like the usual kind of discomfort she would experience when doing direct latch. It didn't seem like the instances where she had cracked nipple and there was this obvious blood around the cracked nipple. So this time around, there isn't any signs of blood and so on. But then I read further and it could likely be due to blood from micro cracks. So Little May was looking fine, and then we didn't think much of it, and then she was still active and so on. So we wanted to maybe observe a little more, and then next came the black streak stools. So in between the black streak stools, which happened around 9 p.m, so there's about 5 hours. In between there was another diaper change, but we did not notice anything different from her stools. Her stools were still normal, consistent color, brownish color, and then everything looked normal and fine. But then came to 9 p.m, as you can see here in the photos. So there's a lot of these black streaks and specks along with the usual brown color of the stool. So this was very unusual because for Little May, for the past 3 months, the stools had always been a consistent yellowish or brownish color. That is of course excluding the first few days where there's this meconium from infants that will be tar-like and black, that we know. But then for the rest of the infancy, the stools were very different from what we saw now. So now we became a little more concerned because it seemed very different. So we did a lot of reading and research online, because we thought that it's easier to find information there than to head down to a pediatrician, and then it will take time as well. And then what other things that made us decide to do our own research first is that Little May, she did not have any fussing, so she looks normal, perfectly fine. If there's no speed up on black streaks in stool, we would think that she's perfectly okay. So what we next did was to test her temperature, see if there's any fever. And then same thing as well, she looked normal, the temperature is okay, there's no fasting, there's no fever, and she was feeding normally. So her appetite, the amount she consumed for the next feed and so on, was also normal as usual. So for the first speed up that we suspected blood, one other thing we did is that we switched to a bottle feeding instead of direct latching to see if the black streaks in stools would go away, because the black streaks in stool we read could also be due to blood in the digestive system or in the milk she consumed. So we wanted to make sure that it is due to the milk, which we guessed because from the speed up there's blood. So if after feeding then speed up blood, probably is from the milk. And then the stool has blood, so we prefer to link it to the milk having the blood. So we switch to bottle feeding. That will eliminate any blood from the cracked nipple. So for the next 4 feeds or 5 feeds, we did just pure bottle feeding. So it was from the milk that my wife had expressed out previously, and then we did exclusive bottle feeding. So we then monitored her for her temperature and the amount she feeds, and then the stools. So for the next 3 stools that she passed out, we checked the stools, and then for the first 1 and 2 there's still these black streaks. But for the third one, it seems that the black streaks has decreased significantly, much lesser. And then by the 4th stool, it returned back to normal and there's no more black streaks in her stool. So that made us conclude that it was due to the micro cracks that my wife probably had during direct latching, but she was not aware of it. So it was quite an experience for us, but then luckily that there was nothing bad that happened to Little May. So we were quite relieved after this whole experience or ordeal. And I hope this video has helped you better understand what could have happened to your baby. But then if there's anything you notice that's different, so if there's a fasting in your baby or the appetite is affected and then the baby seems more uncomfortable than usual, I would strongly recommend you to visit your pediatrician just to be sure that nothing else has happened to your baby. If you have liked this video, please gently help tap on the like button below and consider subscribing. Thank you.